All right, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to this week's Dubb Partners meeting. I am here with Ruben, as always, and we have a special guest waiting in the wings, who we're going to introduce in a second. But if you are new to the meeting, welcome in. We do this every week. We do it 10 a.m. PST every Thursday. We have a lot of fun. We talk strategy. We talk all kinds of good stuff that's going to bring value to everybody. And we're super excited to do this because at the end of the day, like we like to say, Dubb Partners is all about being partners with us. You know, it's not just an affiliate program. This is all about us working with you to bring as much value as we can and to offer our help at any level we can to help you get the word out there about Dubb. As a recap, if you are new, we do 30% recurring commissions. So anyone that uses your referral link, subscribes with Dubb, we pay that out as long as they're a Dubb subscriber for however long that is. So we want to do all we can to make sure you succeed. And people that subscribe with Dubb have about a 92, 93% retention rate, which means they love Dubb, they stay with Dubb. So when you sign up with Dubb and you become a partner with us, this is a regular event we do. And we try to have guests on that absolutely bring value and new knowledge and can really enhance what you're already doing. So that leads me into our guest of the day, which is someone who is massively experienced in this area. He's got such a wonderful background. His name is Jason Forrest, and he is the CEO and founder of Forrest Performance Group. And he is an industry master in sales training and recruiting. And we are so excited to have him in here. So Jason, welcome in, and we're excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here. And I see Gittimer's on the call, which is great. One of my first sales training sessions experiences I ever went to was at a Gittimer conference with my dad. This is like 20 something years ago. And so read all your books. So you're a huge legend. But yeah, let's get going. Let's do some teaching.
Okay. So first question right out of the bat, and I think it's so important for everybody. Talk about your story, Jason. Like, how did you get into the field that you're in currently, and how did Forrest Performance Group begin? How did it all start?
So real quick, I was very fortunate that I grew up in a sales positive family. Most people selling is a plan B career, not a plan A career. Most parents don't tell their children to go to hundreds of thousands of dollars of education in school to someday be a salesperson. That's normally not the career path that parents usually their children towards. I had the opposite of that. I was very fortunate. My father owns the oldest jewelry store in North Dallas, been doing it for 43 years. I'm 43. Pretty much every kind of seems like all my uncles and aunts, everyone was in sales. And so I just grew up in a very positive sales environment. My mom is a retired after 50 years debate coach and public speaking professor. And so I grew up in the debate world and the sales world. My Sunday school teacher was Zig Ziglar out of Dallas, Texas. And so I just kind of had this perfect storm of success and self-help. And again, like when I was a kid, my parents would constantly listen to, Earl Nightingale tapes and Zig Ziglar, and Think and Grow Rich was a book that I had to read when I was a kid. And of course, we would go to Gittimer conferences. And so I was just raised in a very, again, positive sales environment, which was really great. So then fast forward, of course, all my jobs in life were in sales, and a position when I was 25 years old came open to become the head of sales training for a Fortune 500 company. And the reason why it came open is because prior to me, they kept hiring kind of HR trainer type people, and then they would kind of give them the playbook of selling, and then they would say, hey, go teach salespeople from the playbook of selling. But they weren't practitioners, they were philosophers or kind of like corporate trainers. And those people were getting eaten alive because the salespeople would eat them alive, right? They weren't real. And so they decided to kind of flip the script, and so they said, hey, we're going to open this up for our top sellers in the company who wants to be a trainer, that will teach you adult learning theory, will teach you how to train. And I got the job. Again, I grew up in that background. I really wanted to do something like that. I thought I was too young, but went for it and I got it. And I realized that the company was actually onto something, that so many of the sales training that was being provided back in those days, because it was 20 years ago, was it was really soft. So it wasn't actually what the top producers really are doing or were doing at that time. Or number two is it was kind of written a lot by, again, more kind of philosophers than practitioners. And so it wasn't tangible, it wasn't relevant. And so I wanted to change that. And so as an entrepreneur, and kind of grew up as an entrepreneurial spirit, started FPG to be just that, to really focus on creating relevant training material that truly changes behavior. Since then, I became obsessed with that, of why some people succeed and some people don't. And it kind of narrowed it down to really three things. So number one, it's what people think about. Number two, it's what people do. And number three, it's what people say. And so that comes from all of my background in neuro-linguistic programming, accelerated evolution, about removing fear. But that's really it. It's about dialing in those three things: what people think about, what they do, and what they say. And so since then, we've even added a recruiting side as well. So our recruiting side is actually taking off way more than even our training side. Our sales training program is number 2 in the world, and our coaching program is number 1 based on global gurus. But we've also added the sales recruiting side to go find these fearless sales warriors and then train them up in the way of warrior selling and then guarantee the performance as well. So that's been a new venture we've been doing.
Well, Jason, have you seen some commonality in terms of challenges that people that come to your program? And 2, what are some of those challenges, and what does FPG do to kind of overcome them?
Again, the simple thing is we go back to those 3 things, right? So what people think about, what they do, and what they say. So let me give you kind of a fun example. So all of our kids are in sports or they're in theater, different activities. And most recently, our 11-year-old was called up on her 5th grade soccer team. She was called up to play goalie, right? Now the goalie of the 2nd ranked 5th grade soccer team in Fort Worth, Texas. And she deals with what I call the achiever's disease. The achiever's disease is perfectionism. And she gets that from her mom, in my opinion. They're both perfectionists. But the achiever's disease of perfectionism means that they're way harder on themselves than anyone else can be on them. And so she's playing this team called the Divas, and all of a sudden she gets a score, a goal scored on her. And you could see her just freaking out. I mean, she's completely crumbling at that moment. And so I walk over there and I start talking to her and I say, Elizabeth, what are you thinking about right now? I'm not thinking about anything. And you can just tell she's just like losing her cool. And so I try to coach her and get her to think differently. And then all of a sudden, there's a breakaway and the ball's coming down the field and she attacks the ball and she saves actually a pretty big goal from getting in, and of course her entire energy changed. And I said, you did a great job. You attacked the ball compared to before you were being more passive. Like, what happened? What were you thinking about at that moment? And she said, Dad, I wanted to kick their butts. I said, that's interesting, right? And I said, so from here on out, I need you to think that way. Every time the ball is coming your way, I need you to think, I want to attack their butts or attack. I want to attack and kick their butts and then attack, right? I use it as an example because that's the number one problem that we have with salespeople is that they have what we call these 4 types of leashes. And I wrote them up in my book, The Mindset of a Sales Warrior. And so these 4 types of leashes are nothing more than head trash or mental resistance that holds salespeople back. So the 4 types are very simple. Number 1, it's a self-image. And this comes back from again, the days of Think and Grow Rich and psycho-cybernetics and just self-image. So they don't feel like they're worthy of being this person, or they've got an identity issue. And one of the things that we believe is there's no such thing as a circumstance that's holding you back. There's an identity that's holding you back. So if they don't see themselves as a sales professional and that's not their identity, then it's going to hold them back. Number 2 is a story. And a story would be, they don't believe that they can sell via Zoom. As soon as everything changed with the coronavirus, there's a lot of people that made excuses that said, I sell being face-to-face. I can't sell via Zoom. So all my business is going to go down until I can go, spend a crazy amount of money taking people to dinners. And so that's a story. It's external. Or number 3 is a reluctance. They have some sort of fear. They have a fear of stage fright or there's actually a fear of using Dubb videos. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but there's a fear. We can actually measure, it's a combination of hyper pro reluctance and role rejection and stage fright. Those are all reluctances. You take those combined, then people would have fear of, I'm putting myself on camera and I'm sending this video to someone and they're afraid to do it. And so they spend way too much wasted energy thinking about it or preparing and not actually just doing it. And then last is a rule. And think of a rule like a rule of engagement. In war, it's don't fire until fired upon. But the problem with most salespeople is they've got too many rules. And they'll say, well, I know I'm going to ask a person to buy as long as the following criteria is met. And they have to see and feel and hear and kind of, all this criteria, and then they'll engage. Well, that's not good. And so a big thing that we do is to try to help people assess their leashes, their self-image, stories, reluctances, and rules, and then remove those while, of course, giving them the appropriate knowledge.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so specific too, which is really good. By the way, big props to your daughter playing goalie in soccer, because next to hitting a baseball in sports, goalie is probably one of the toughest positions to play because you almost have to kind of anticipate, guess the side. I mean, that's amazing that she's playing that position.
She has to throw her face at another person's foot.
Yeah. I mean, it's literally one of the most dangerous, just anticipatory positions in sports. Yeah. So that's amazing. Talk to me more about, the warrior aspect. Why did sales warrior resonate with you in terms of kind of almost like the defining description of what you're doing?
Yeah. Well, so number 1, I mean, sometimes the idea of a warrior has a charge for people, but what I like to tell people is we all have a warrior archetype in us. If anytime you overcame any sort of adversity, you warriored up. Anytime a mother goes through labor pains and births a child, that was a warrior moment. Anytime a kid, succeeds from a C, turns a C to an A, that's a warrior moment. These are all warrior moments. So the warrior archetype is an important archetype. But with that, I think there are three kind of like slivers or elements of a warrior that really makes up a warrior. So number one, it's a leader. Number two is a protector. And number three is a servant. And so a leader is a person that you follow to a place you wouldn't go on your own. You lead people, you lead your prospects from a place of fear and a place of worry to a place of hope and certainty, to a place they wouldn't go on their own. And number two is a protector. And a protector is, you're protecting them from what? You're protecting them from their own fear, their own worries, their own insecurities, their own leashes. You're protecting them from the board. You're protecting them from their coworkers. You're protecting them from their significant others, their parents, the media. I mean, right now, we have a ton of clients in the housing market, and the housing market's going to change here very quickly because with interest rates going up 2%, all of a sudden people are starting to get a little bit gun shy, and so a sales professional is going to have to protect that customer from the media, from their friends and family, from their parents, and say, hey, is this really a good decision? You're now paying 2% more for a house plus inflate plus the house is going up 40%. Is this really a good move for you to make? So a warrior has to protect them from these other enemies that are holding them back, and of course con artists and manipulators. And then last, you're a servant. And so we've all heard the term servant leader, but you're a servant in the sense of you're serving their outcome frame. And we all know in sales, guys, it's never about what the person wants. It's about why they want it. It's about the meaning behind it. And so we have to sell the meaning, not the actual product or service. So what will this do for them? What's the meaning or significance they get it? So like a great way to think about that is it's never about this, it's always about that. So people don't go they don't buy Dubb because they want to just have a creative way to send emails to people. Why do they buy Dubb? They buy Dubb because they're looking for an advantage. They're looking for, and well, why do they want the advantage? Well, because if they can get the advantage, then they can get more sales qualified leads they can talk to, which they can of course convert and find that advantage. So it's all about what's the meaning that they're trying to accomplish.
Do you find the meaning is even more important now in terms of the current climate we're in, the economy, inflation, supply chain issues, et cetera? Is that more of that, or is there something else that's an element that people can use as well to really break through right now?
I think that would be super crucial now. So let's kind of keep things real simple. So people always talk about, are we in a good economy or a bad economy, a good market or a bad market? Well, my kind of simple definition of that is it's a good market if it's socially acceptable to buy what you're selling. So it really hasn't had to do with the global market. That doesn't really matter, right? It has to do with like your specific industry, your product or service, and the people that you're selling your product or service to. That's like its own little market. So inside of that little market, is it socially acceptable to buy what you're selling? Meaning that when you're not a part of that conversation, do people reinforce the decision, or do they tell them they're an idiot, right? Like, are they for it or are they against it? And so why is that important? Well, because in my opinion, the difference between marketing and sales is marketing's job is to do a great job of getting market sales, but sales's job is to convince people that the market is not convinced of. That if they're not convinced to do business with you because they've got enough kind of enemies behind them that are telling them not to do it, and it's not socially acceptable to do it, well, that's where a salesperson has to jump in and has to kind of fill the gap, right? Has to fill that void, and that's what great selling is. So to make it short, the more socially unacceptable it is to purchase what you are selling, the more a sales warrior must make the why greater than the sacrifice. They must make the meaning bigger than the cost of change and the consequence that a person's going to make.
Yeah, and the big why, I would imagine, is a huge part of mindset in general. From your experience over the years, what has been like, what comes to your mind in terms of, your favorite story, your favorite, Forest Performance Group story of seeing an individual or a team really grow through the program and come out the other side. Like, did anything come to mind?
I think all of them are phenomenal. I think the coolest thing that we really strive for, like the number one thing I would say that we look for is when people tell us it like changed their whole life and not just like it improved their sales or improved their leadership skills. So one of our core beliefs at FPG is there's no such thing as business problems. There are only personal problems that affect your business. So I'll say that again. There's no such thing as business problems. There are only personal problems that affect your business. So let's say we're training a sales leader on how to have a very tough conversation with one of their salespeople. And they constantly yield on having those tough conversations. And they don't do a good job of they avoid conflict, do a good job of setting proper expectations and setting boundaries and creating accountability. Well, it's not just a work thing. I promise you that's a them thing. They have a hard time setting boundaries with everyone in life. They have a hard time in running towards tough conversations with everyone in life. And so our approach is very different in the sense that we teach people, how to be unleashed in all these kind of general areas that of course also applies to their work. And we feel like it gives kind of like a double service for them. And so that to me, I say is most rewarding is when they come back and say, yeah, my sales are up 20%, but what's even cooler is that, my wife says I'm a better husband now or a better father. I mean, that to me is what we're really trying to accomplish.
And it must be nice to see too, when someone comes through the other side where maybe like, inside of them as they're kind of being recreated almost, maybe, it's because sometimes as humans, we get a little nervous. We're like, oh, I'm going to revert back to kind of what I'm comfortable with. So it must be nice to see people change their mindset and stop that from happening and realize what they're doing, go for it.
Yeah, and that's the only way. That's the only way to make that behavior change stick.
Yeah,
is that they have to, again, they have to change how they think about it, and they have to change how they feel about it. And again, I mean, we've all listened to great teachers, great podcasts, great everything. But the biggest question I always like to ask people is, whenever you learn anything, is what stops you from doing it?
Right.
I know that's kind of a silly question, but if you ask people like what stops you from doing this, or another question that's great in coaching to ask is what do you believe it's going to work? Like, do you believe what this teacher is teaching you is going to work? Do you believe it's going to accomplish blank goal that you want to accomplish, or that they say it's going to accomplish? And then they're either going to say yes or no. They either say, well, I'm not really sure. Okay, well, what about it makes you not sure? And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to flush out the leashes. I'm trying to flush out that stuff. And if I can get that stuff out, then I can then ask them another question, which is really around how they feel about it. So then I'll say, so tell me how you're feeling about doing blank. And then I get them to, give me some sort of emotion. The emotion behind it is, I'm feeling a little bit uncertain about it. Okay, well, How do you want to feel instead? Well, I want to feel confident and bold around it.
Right.
Okay, well, let's talk through a path on how to get you from feeling uncertain to feeling bold, and let's figure out what's preventing you from that. But that's a different level of coaching as well, because I think so often, people as managers, they just tell them, look, shut up and do what I tell you to do. But then we get frustrated that when we circle back, they're not actually doing what we're telling them to do. And we're almost like surprised when we circle back and, hey, how did blank work that so-and-so told you to do? And we read this book and we agreed upon it. Oh, I just haven't done it yet. But again, it's all about those leashes. It's all about that mental resistance.
And in regards to the leashes and the mental resistance, you're only able to get into that through investigative question asking and really getting down to what the root of it is, right? I mean, that's really what it's about.
That's everything of what it's about. So that's why it's so important. And this is a good self-reflective tool that you guys can all use. So if you think about a problem right now that you're having, so you think about a goal that you want. So if everyone wants to do this, we could do this. Think about a goal that you currently want to accomplish, and then right now, ask yourself, how are you feeling about accomplishing that goal?
Right. That's so important. Yep. What's on the horizon, Jason? Talk to us about the rest of 2022 for Forrest Performance Group and yourself, and what's kind of coming with you guys.
Well, the big thing right now is we're just completely trying to dial in and disrupt the sales recruiting side. So our training side's great, we enjoy that, but look, the real need out there right now is finding top salespeople and then getting them onboarded properly. So I don't know if you guys, this is pretty interesting stats. There's 800,000 open sales positions right now. In addition to that, there's also only around 800,000 people looking for a job. So it's like a 1-to-1 ratio when it comes to people looking for a job and the jobs available. Well, the problem with that is that we all know the people that are looking for a sales job are not the people that usually you want. It's the ones that are currently not looking, it's ones you want. And then in the last kind of element of the perfect storm, which is pretty crazy, is less than 3% of colleges are even teaching this kind of stuff. So we're not really providing or producing, an adequate enough kind of supply that keeps up with the demand. And so that's what we're doing. We're just really working on kind of revitalizing the whole sales headhunter world. So there's a big difference between a sales recruiter and a headhunter. I'm actually doing a webinar here in 2 hours on it. Most of the recruiters out there are very passive, and they just kind of put jobs out there and just hope that someone takes their job. We really push ourselves to be headhunters, and so we actually go out there and find the right people. Kind of we created the money ball of sales. So finding the unique attributes that make them successful, and then we have headhunters that cold call them and convince them to leave their current company and work for our clients. So it's and then of course onboard them, train them. So it's a pretty cool thing.
That's awesome. Ruben, go ahead. I got one more question for Jason after you, but go. What do you got?
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to kind of open up the conversation. Wanted to kind of bring some interactivity to it. The thing that I'm always thinking about is this. I want to write a book on it. In fact, Jeffrey Gitomer, I'd love to write this book with you on this, which is the sales trust problem, or the trust paradox, which is this idea that we're brought up to have this idea that strangers are dangers, right? And that we shouldn't talk to people. But anyone in sales, of course, was taught that you need to speak to strangers. Jeffrey, that's what you did in New York for a long time. You literally went to buildings, door to door, selling, and somehow you got up to the office of the CEO and you made your sale. And isn't it interesting that there is that massive paradox that exists in our society, that strangers are dangerous, but at the same time, if we want to be good at sales, we need to be able to be a good communicator with strangers. The problem here is, in my opinion, it's a couple of things. It's let me just share this one slide I have. Rob, if you could make me a co-host.
Yep. Good.
This idea of, let me know once that's done.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, cool. So just sharing screen. So there's this idea of people don't trust cold salespeople. Initially, when I wrote this slide, I was like, should I say salespeople? Should I say people? Should I say strangers? I decided to write cold salespeople. I might change this, but that's what I have for now. Why? Here's just a couple of reasons that have come to me in the past. They've been burned in the past. We've all been through that. We got that email saying, update your credit card on PayPal. We've got that text message that says, hey, your bank account has some changes. Please click here to change something. We've all gotten that phone call saying, hey, you need to do such and such for your home loan. When in fact, it's bad actors out there that are trying to take money from us. And number two is that they don't want to be distracted. Like, we all know how noisy it is. We're doing our thing. We get pings, the phone, the notifications, the LinkedIn messages. It just goes buck wild. We have to kind of protect ourselves from those distractions. And then the third one, which is something that I've been really contemplating, is that fear supersedes value perception. So someone on the other end might have the best possible value proposition I could think of for me and the problems that I'm trying to solve in my life. But my fear, my self-preservation, my self-protection will supersede whatever it is that I'm open to hearing. And this is just when the body language to this is when my arms are crossed like this. Does not matter what the person is saying. I'm saying I'm shutting this out, right? Even though the person might be saying something extremely valuable. Now, the struggle that we all experience from this is, from a seller's perspective, is no one picks up my sales calls. I'm sick of getting hung up on. I hate being ignored. I'm not getting results. From the buyer's perspective, I hate spam calls and SMS. I'm tired of being cold called. I'm sick of the noise, and I'm not finding the solutions. So what is the solution here? In my opinion, the solution is is it's building trust, but it's more so it's providing value. And this is really where I think people have a hard time. Jason, you mentioned people sometimes feel fear when recording videos, when using Dubb. I acknowledge that. I accept that. I validate that. In fact, sometimes I experience that where I don't know what the heck I should say. And what I try to root myself in is, how can I provide value? How can I make a message that's so compelling to the person that they're like, you know what? I did not know that. Now I know that, and that helps me. Will that build trust with me? Maybe. Will that make them want to be receptive, to be open-minded, to potentially buy from me? Maybe. Will I have made a friend in the process? Maybe. There's a lot of maybes here. But what I do know, the resounding yes to, is that I will feel good about it. I won't feel desperate. I won't feel like I'm chasing someone. I will feel like I'm being an educator and I'm providing value. So how can we provide value? And this is really where I want to open up the convo here, because this is a short list of things that I have. Number one is validation. Number two is feedback, industry updates, sales solutions, which is the stuff that we're trying to sell. And then the last one is, I think, my favorite, which is agnostic solutions, which basically means I'm going to give you a solution. I'm going to give you some information where I actually don't benefit from this. There's no vested interest in this. If you receive this information, it's completely on you. I will get nothing out of it. So what I'd like to do is, I'd like to understand from people in the audience is, what are we doing and what can we do better to instead of following up, instead of nudging that person, instead of bothering that person on SMS, LinkedIn, email, how can we provide value? Jeffrey, if you're open to turning on your mic, love to get your notes on this.
That's
okay. He had a job. All right. Jason, hit us up, man. Also,
yeah, my simple thing, one of the things I constantly preach and teach is, you have to be provocatively respectful. I mean, that would be the biggest thing I would say, is that you have to teach people something new. I mean, as soon as you are getting people to think differently, there are neurotransmitters that are released in the brain. You have dopamine and all kinds of great drugs that are released in the brain, and so if you have to be able to do that. And I would say, and we write thousands of sales scripts for our clients, and right now we're in 40 different industries, something like that. And every single time, the number one thing that I see salespeople don't do a good enough job of is they're not saying anything different than what their competition says. So I'm sure you guys have all seen, maybe you haven't. If you haven't seen the movie, you should see it. It's an old movie called Walk the Line with Joaquin Phoenix.
Yes. Yeah, really good.
Okay, yep. So here's a cool, go YouTube the clip, Walk the Line, Joaquin Phoenix, and it's like I think the clip plays like the same song or something like that, right? So it's a story.
Oh yeah.
Right. It's a story of Johnny Cash, and he's got his one shot to be in front of the producer and say, hey, pick me. And he starts playing this, the same song everyone else plays. And so the scene in the movie is like, let me stop you. You're going to play the same old hymn that everyone else plays your way, or are you going to play something different? If you have one moment to say something you want the world to hear, is this the song you're going to sing? Are you going to sing something different? And then all of a sudden he just sings his Johnny Cash song and he becomes Johnny Cash. And I use that as, to me, the easiest example of the reason why, Ruben, all of those stats are correct is not because, in my opinion, the customers don't want to be bothered. It's because the customers aren't being educated on anything that matters to them. That's where I get a little bit, maybe not charged, but I get a little bit on the offensive when we kind of look at the surface of some of those stats, Ruben, where customers don't want this and they don't want this, they don't want to be bothered and be interrupted. Well, my belief system is customers don't have a problem with salespeople or salespeople in general. They have a problem with salespeople that are unethical, unhelpful, and boring.
Yep.
Okay, so I use the word cold. Should I use the word bad?
I think you should use the word bad. I think you should. Yeah, I mean, I think you should use the word bad. I just, as long as you get them to think differently and you teach them something that's of value to them, and again, you're respectfully provocative, people will lean in. And that's not a Jason thing, guys. Look at Elon Musk. I mean, that guy's literally taking over the universe right now. because he's provocatively respectful, and people, right?
Here's the reason why I didn't use the word, like a negative word like bad. I'll tell you why it was. Because I don't want people to feel like they have to be defensive and say, I'm not a bad salesperson. Because frankly, in my opinion, there's no good or bad. There's behavior, there's actions. There are the things that we do, the things that we've taught, the defense mechanisms that we have, the goals that we try to attain. And what I think that's so interesting is that we're actually all learning here, right? We're all learning how to punch LinkedIn inbox, right? How many inboxes unread are in our LinkedIn folders right now? Inbox. It's insane. I mean, hundreds, right? If not thousands. Like, what is the right way? I don't have the answer to this question. What is the right way to send someone a message where they've ignored you 30 times to get their attention, right? Providing value is an off-the-shelf statement to say, but Jason, to your point, we need to be good. We need to be better. You know, we need to get to that place.
Yeah, I think that, look, here's the thing, and this will be a great assignment for everyone to do, is go, to your point, go look at your LinkedIn inbox and look at all of the messages that people say that are doing the same thing. So they have the exact same service, right? So let's say it's a lead gen company, an SEO lead gen company. They say the same thing. Like they don't say anything different. So there's no disrupting the pattern, and they all promise the same thing, say they're going to do the same things, and they're of course trying to schedule a call.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing. I mean, so Dubb in itself, the reason why Dubb works so well, because Dubb in itself follows the NLP disrupt the pattern principle. But what I would suggest is don't just rely on the disrupt the pattern of Dubb, because unfortunately, as we all know, it's going to become, it is the thing now, but you're going to have to find a way to disrupt the pattern inside the video, because the video right now will click because it's a video and it's different, but it's still going to be noisy eventually, right? So we got to kind of be ahead of it.
Jason, let me ask you that. Oh, sorry, Ruben. Just want to ask this real quick because it kind of relates to that. Your phrase "selfies to CEOs," right? It's an awesome phrase. It's one of the best catchphrases. Selfies to CEOs. The vehicle we're already talking about, Dubb, makes a difference, right? But for you, what's the with your experience doing this, what's the verbiage in there that you think about to get that dopamine release for the CEO, that he's not only impressed by the vehicle, which is the Dubb video, but he's impressed by what you're saying as well?
I'm just always trying to think in my head, okay, well, what's the problem that this person's trying to solve? What's the frustration? I'm always thinking you almost have to kind of think negative in order to make it work. So what's the problem they're trying to solve? What's the pain point? What's the frustration? What's annoying them right now? What's bothering them? Those are really the things that I'm attacking. Those are the things that I'm trying to, do my absolute best to solve and get their attention.
So Megan, I saw that you had a question here. You put it in the chat, which is awesome. I've spoken to Megan a few times. She's wonderful. Megan, do you want to turn your microphone on and jump in here? I know you're talking about, the saturation of content out there right now and using Dubb to kind of capitalize, in a way to kind of the novelty in quotes of it. But you can turn your mic on and jump in if you'd like, if you have a second to jump into the combo here.
Well, I kind of came in late, so I'm not sure if this is entirely, what the discussion is about, but, it is such a fine line. It's such a conundrum because, just yesterday is a perfect example. On LinkedIn, I had somebody reach out to me via DM, and I was excited. It was somebody who was, in strategy as well, and she was in Canada, and I'm dying to go to Canada and meet as many people as I can who live in Canada so they can tell me where to go. And so I said, tell me about your business. And she's immediately switched gears and pitched me, and, was so disappointed, And so there is such a fine line of creating that initial contact, creating a little. And when you're kind of more charismatic, like we all tend to be, or many of us tend to be, who have had a sales background or in sales currently, there's that trust factor too.
with a good mentor.
Yeah. And so, people are really suspect. So it's a real fine line. And I have enjoyed using Dubb and creating that that GIF or GIF, however, whatever, everybody's got their thing. But, and that has been a great differentiator. And then coming in real light and saying, hey, I just wanted to say hello. This is a groovy new product I found and I'm having fun using it. And, it's not necessarily answering your question, but it's been a way that I've sort of enjoyed using Dubb because it's such a novelty at this point. People are dying for that kind of connection. I tell all my clients that it skips several steps in terms of generating trust. Because they've got your face, they've got your video. But it's such a challenging thing because people are so suspect at this point, and so many people are straight up selling in the DMs. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I feel like you got to give a little bit of connection and not just go straight to that sale. So anyway, I don't know how. I'm dying to know. When y'all figure the answer out, let me know.
Yeah, I wanted to. I was just gonna say, no, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that story. I wanted to share two quick stories. There was one where there was a guy and he was putting out some interesting content on sales. I'm not going to say his name. And I said, hey, do you want to be on my podcast? I'd love to interview you and understand what you're up to. And he says, hey, that sounds fine. But hey, listen, will you sponsor this event that we're having? Here's the PDF. And on that PDF was the pricing page. So it went from a podcast invite to a hard sales pitch with literally pricing in my face. And it was really aggressive. And I was frankly offended. I was like, listen, man, I put a lot of time into this podcast and I don't just go around inviting everyone and anyone. That's a big deal for me. I have to take time. We have to produce it. And it hurt my feelings a little bit. And I don't think he's going to be a guest on my podcast, nor do I think I'm going to be sponsoring this event that he has. I don't even remember what it was called. The second story that I wanted to share was a guy that actually is in my building at where our headquarters is. And he has an office close by, and he was doing some research on a video kind of sales operating tool. And funny enough, he found Dubb, and he searched and he found the address, and he realized we were at the same building. So he just came to my location, my office, and he knocked on my door and he said, hey man, I'd love to understand what you're doing. And I said, sure, let's talk. So now we've become friends. He's a sales rep. He's just kind of starting out at this company. And he's sort of been bringing me a lot of information. Funny enough, his company will not pay for Dubb. They will not pay for any type of video messaging. They don't agree with it. They don't believe in it. It's really antiquated. They don't like this idea. They want everything to be scripted and properly sent and just by all the kind of bureaucratic methods. And that, that's another thing that hurt me. Okay. So what's interesting is he's decided to go somewhat corporate road, which means he's just going to try stuff by himself and pay for it with his own credit card, not break any rules, but just experiment and see if it works. So I've just been working with him, just literally next to him, trying to get him some deals. And there was a thing that he did that it was my idea. And I don't know if I gave him a bad idea. And the reason why I'm saying this, Jason, is because you send selfies to CEOs. In fact, sometimes you use the avatar characters on your iPhone as a character and use, I don't know if you still do that, but it was my coolest thing that you said that you did, because it's pretty bold. But what you're doing is you're trying to have a pattern disrupt, okay? And I'd like to open up the conversation to what are those pattern disrupts where we can capture someone's attention and also provide value. And what I'm going to show you very quickly is this idea. And what I'll do is I'll share my screen and you guys tell me if this is a good idea or a bad idea. But what he's doing is that he's using the, it's not going to let me do it because of Zoom. What he's doing is that he's taking a screenshot of someone's LinkedIn profile. And then he's using that as the virtual background behind him. So when he's sending that video out, it's literally on the backdrop of the person's either LinkedIn page or sometimes their website. And the reason why he's doing that is, of course, to say, I've done my research. I'm looking at your stuff. I'm understanding who you are, and I'm not trying to be salesy and be pitching. Sometimes when I look at that, I say, wow, that's pretty innovative and pretty clever. sometimes I look at that and I say, well, that's creepy. And I'd like to just have that be a catalyst of how we can pattern disrupt, how we can be creative, how we can, capture people's attention.
Jason, this one's for you in terms of leading into all that. So from the transitional standpoint of making that rapport, right, from your experience over the years, having that conversation, right? For you, when do you kind of feel, is there a rule of thumb to when you transition to talking biz, to what it's about? Because in Mad Men, one of my favorite shows is, I think Roger said, he's smoking a cigarette, wait for the dessert, and then you talk whatever. But in terms of this real world now, where do you feel that lay? Like, what's the strategy there in terms of that?
I mean, I'm always on the extreme side of things. So I've just always felt that I think salespeople usually take too long to get to the point. So my belief system is, and again, we're talking a lot of things. If you're having dinner with someone, and they're going to give you that much undivided attention, then maybe you wait until you've ordered food before you do something. But it is a general belief system that I have, is that important people that you're going after, people that are making money that you're going after, people that are successful that you're going after, time is more valuable than money to them. And so they don't have a lot of kind of bullshit free time laying around. Right. And I think the mistake that salespeople make is they spend too much time doing what I call faux rapport building techniques. And they talk about things that that important people and successful people just don't care about. And I think it's a huge flaw that a lot of trainers unfortunately have taught. So for example, if you called me and you started, and I actually answered your phone, let's say you did cold call me and I actually answered your phone, and you started talking about, hey, how's your day been? Like, why would you even need, why do we need to talk about that? Like, that's one, I'm not going to give you a real answer. So we're already out of rapport with how's your day been. And then number two, then you start saying stuff like, maybe you decide to get creative and you know that I'm in Dallas. And so, how about the Cowboys? How do you think they're going to do this year? And you start having small talk, talking about hobbies or whatever, right? Like, the problem is that what are you now saying about yourself? So you're saying, because again, successful people don't have time for that stuff. Like I'm a big fan of, for a long time people said, hey, you do business on the golf course and you can make money playing golf. And that's not true. Most successful people have zero time on their hands to play golf. So it's like, it's almost like the opposite of what you would think. And so when someone calls and starts, hey, how was your weekend? Or what did you do last night? Or that, well, again, number one, you're telling me that you're not successful because you actually have time to do those things. Yeah. And number two is that you're actually making me now kind of wonder and maybe feel bad about the fact that I don't have time to do those things. So I don't have time to do those things. So I'm now feeling bad about it. And now you're telling me that you have time to do those things, which means you are not as successful as me. And so why in the world would I continue this conversation if you're not as successful as me? You have nothing to add value now. So you see, I'm very polarizing, I know, on this other end of the scale. But so I take a different approach. I mean, I teach my entire team and all of our clients, when they are going to cold call, which we could debate if that's even necessary anymore, but we still have BDRs that cold call. I mean, my people get right to it. They literally say, I know your time is valuable. I'm going to get right down to it.
Yeah. Well, I think, even with, Ruben and I have talked about this, and this is always a point of discussion, but, I'm a big fan of the smart calling when you use data to pick up the phone and call when you have that reason, cold calling, the listening environment, all that good stuff. So strategies are, they're always different. But for you, Jason, in particular, how important is data in terms of, really bringing value, to that conversation?
I mean, it's everything. I mean, again, to me, one of the most important things of earning respect. So that's a big thing I'm always trying to look for is how do I earn the customer's respect? And I believe one of the number one ways you earn respect is teach me something new. Teach me something I haven't thought about. So the data is huge because if you can figure that out. So for example, again, on our recruiting side, the data that we're using right now is I'm not sure you're aware of this right now, but there are 800,000 open sales positions, and at the same time, there's 800,000 people looking for a job. And so it's basically a 1-to-1 ratio of people looking for a job and the jobs that are available. And I'm sure Mr. Customer, the one who's looking for a job, is not the person you actually want. Yeah. So like, I'm really big on like finding again, those data points that make people go, that's interesting. Number one, I agree with that. And that's an interesting, and so to me, I think that's very, very important, is to find that data. At the same time, you want to be careful about who you're going after. So, here's a good way to look at it. So one of the things that we teach is called the 3 categories of a buyer. Okay. So a category 1 buyer is your true just looking buyer. So this is the one who's they're interested in your services and what you have to offer, but they haven't made a decision to make a change yet. A category 2 is that overwhelmed buyer. They definitely decide to make a change, but they're kind of overwhelmed with all the options. And then a category 3 is torn between like you and your biggest competitor. Okay, so that would be the 3 categories. So what's important is to find data out there that can also help narrow down who you're going after.
Right.
So for example, like my team does cold call. I mean, we have BDRs that are cold calling, 100 people a day and sending out blasts, but they only cold call people, for example, in our world, who are people who are currently looking to hire salespeople.
Right.
How do we know that? Well, we use tools like LinkedIn Insights that show us, the companies that are currently have job openings. And so we're not just cold calling in the sense of going after people that may or may not have a need for hiring a salesperson in the future. Like we're specifically going after people who have open sales positions.
Right.
You can see that position's been open now for 25 days.
Okay.
Or however long, right? And they haven't clearly found someone yet. And so that's a big problem for them.
Ruben, before I pop over to you, Jason, I got to follow up with that one. So about in today's busy, noisy, whatever adjective you want to describe world, how many touch points, I hate that phrase, but how many touch points do you think is adequate now in terms of reaching out to someone?
I hate.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I've heard 6. I've heard 8. I've heard 12. I mean,
Yeah,
we kind of just keep going until they just say stop.
That's described. But I mean,
so they buy or die.
Right,
now,
right.
But here's the thing. Here's actually an interesting debate, because I will say, do they buy or die? But then one of the other things that we teach in our sales process that people always think is like comical when we say this is that we do say follow-up is for losers.
All right, explain that. Go on that.
They go, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Well, think about any sales trainer that literally puts follow-up in their sales process. They're already saying that their initial sales pitch is not going to be strong enough, that they're going to have to follow up. So why are you setting yourself up for a losing, like for a plan B opportunity? Like go in knowing that you're going to leave it all in the field. And the research says that, this is pretty interesting, guys. The research says that let's check this out. So based on our research, 80% of prospects that you speak to are category 1 buyers. And that would be of your sales qualified leads. Let's don't talk about like cold calling, but just of their sales qualified leads that you speak to, 80% of those are going to be category 1s. That means people that haven't decided to burn the boats and make a change. Here's another stat for you. Research says that the average salesperson only has 2 sales conversations a week, so sales pitches a week. And number 3 is that the average salesperson only has only talks to one customer. It only has a be back conversation with 20% of their customers. So like that's insane, right? If you look at those stats. So what does that tell you? It tells you, in my opinion, that it's very little. The problem is not in the follow-up. The problem is in that first conversation, in that pitch, in that first presentation, that first sales process. They're doing such an ineffective and poor job of saying and doing the right things that gets them to either A, buy right there, or B, wants to have another conversation with them. So my point is we're kind of addressing the wrong problem. And so then people say, okay, well, then just follow up with them. Well, it doesn't really matter at that point, because they don't want to talk to you ever again. Like you weren't good enough in the first hour of that conversation that made them want to speak with you. Like that's the key to the whole thing, is do they want to talk to you again? Because you did such a great job in the first part of teaching them something new, solving their problems, owning the experience, leading, protecting, serving them, that why wouldn't they want to talk to you again? Versus, well, they're just not going to. So now let's just like follow up with them 1,000 times until they, that's not effective. You get that? You see a little passionate about it?
Yeah, I know. I like it. I like it. Like you're leaning in, you're getting animated. What about in terms of the nurturing aspect? So forget the follow-up. Like, you know what I mean? Like as far as down the line, is there any kind of strategy there?
And again, of course. I mean, I think
Right.
that's huge. I mean, I think the key to selling is about resolution, right?
Mhm.
So there's only four things that always happen in these sales conversations. So number one is that you sell them. Number two is that you convince them to have another conversation with you, right? Number three is they say, I'm definitely going with you. I'm just not going with you now, which is actually not a bad thing. I'm definitely going with you. I'm just not going with you now, meaning I can't afford you now or the timing's wrong, but I 100% we both mutually agree that you're not going with the competitor, right? That's number three. And number four is you lost. Like they're doing something else besides you. Those are the only four things.
Yep.
So that's really interesting if you think about those are the only four outcomes that can happen in any sales conversation. And so with that, and so to your point, and what I believe is that if I can get resolution at the end that says, that I'm definitely want to have another conversation with you. Well, that's where Dubb comes in, and obviously I want to continue adding that value behind my back. I think the biggest competitor we have is the conversation we're not present to. So remember I said the social economy. As soon as they get off the phone with us, they're talking behind our back. And the question is, the people are they talking to? Are they for us or against us? So the Dubb campaigns, in my opinion, the Dubb videos helps create a PR message that protects and insulates them or indoctrinates them from the enemies that are against you. So that's huge to keep that follow-up to actually happen. And then number two is the ones that say, I'm 100% going forward with you, but not yet. Then of course we want to, create a campaign, around those people as well.
That's beautifully said, and with a lot of passion and a lot of data, a lot of experience. So
just don't go in thinking you're going to lose and you have to follow up. Like that's
right.
You're dead in the water when you do that.
Yeah, definitely the wrong attitude and way you want to go. Ruben, we're heading to the top of the hour now. Anything you have for Jason before we go? Anything on your mind?
No, I think this was a really great conversation. I wanted to kind of thank everyone for making this interactive and really making us think differently about how we're approaching all of this. At the end of the day, people like to buy from their friends, and people like to make friends. And frankly, when I think about sales and I think about making relationships, I think about what is the most fun, what is entertaining, what is going to be something that we can continue to do and we enjoy doing. And there are some things that people frankly just don't like doing, which is chasing people or getting rejected. So let's not do those things. Let's figure out ways to be constantly building relationships, providing value, and everything, I think, just has to come down to something that's mutually beneficial. So Jason, huge shout out to you. Thank you so much for being a believer, for educating us, for being a trainer on this. And gratitude.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, Jason, thank you so much again. I mean, seriously, the knowledge you dropped here is so valuable. And if everyone out there wants to connect with Jason, reach out to him because he's got a lot to share. So thanks again, Jason.
Yeah.
Really, really, really appreciate it.
And I was just going to quickly show what the virtual background looks like just to deliver on that promise.
There it is.
So, awesome. Is this a good idea? Maybe. Will it work? Not sure. But you can upload in Dubb. You can go to the virtual background, upload an image here. And that could be, Megan, I did yours. Hope that's okay with you. This could be a website. This could be a LinkedIn profile. Again, it just goes back to what Jason was talking about, which is pattern disrupt, delighting people, capturing people's attention. It's kind of like sending a selfie to a CEO.
Perfect way to say it.
Cool idea. I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it this week.
Nice.
Well, everybody, thanks for showing up this week. We're going to send a recording out to everybody. And obviously every week, 10 a.m. PST, Dubb Partners meeting. Jason, thank you so much again. Everybody, thanks for joining us and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.